We're joined now by the former executive producer of Hockey Night in Canada, the co-host of the Bob McCowan podcast, and BC Lions / Grey Cup fan, John Shannon. Hello, Mr. Shannon. How are you?
I'm good, boys. You're sounding okay, Matt. You're getting better. That's good.
Yeah, it's the forever cold, but we're getting there. So you went to Grey Cup on Sunday?
Oh, I had a blast. Just an unbelievable time. It's with all the ups and downs of the CFL, and I think there's more ups right now than downs. It just makes you feel good. It was, in my mind, it was one of the top 3 Grey Cup games I've ever been at, and loved every moment of it. And you could just sense Montreal getting more confident, even though they screwed up the end of the second quarter. You could just see them grow in confidence with almost every play in the second half.
Good crowd, good game, good halftime show. They kind of knocked it out of the park, and their rating was pretty good for the modern games. I mean, they've been growing the last 3 years coming out of the pandemic. I mean, it's a good sign for the CFL, isn't it?
It is, and a lot has to do with stability of ownership. Obviously, in Montreal, they have new ownership. In Vancouver, there's new ownership. MLSE. The interesting thing is MLSE, who own the Argonauts, have reinvested in football, probably because the soccer team's been a little subpar.
Yes.
Yeah, and I think that they've started to realize that, wow, this is a pretty good product, and we should stick with it. But if they can, I never thought I'd say this in my lifetime, but if they can fix the problems in Edmonton, and turn the team around in Regina, this league is going certainly in the correct direction.
We're going to get to Quinn Hughes and the Canucks here in a second. Just one last question. As a former television executive, CBS was your U.S. carrier this year. They were in for $1 million. They did 30-some games and then chose not to do the Grey Cup. Would that concern you?
No, because I respectfully, the CFL is filler for all these cable networks in the United States. CBS Sports Network, whether it was on ESPN for a while, and really what's happening with the CFL, and they deserve a bit of credit, is they're now selling an out-of-country product, so that if there's an awareness, you can actually subscribe to a CFL product that gets you the TSN feed, and you're going to do just fine. So we should stop worrying about what goes on outside the boundaries and start and let's just be proud of what we do for our own country. You talk about ratings, that's all we should be worried about. What's happening in our country and growing the game, the CFL game within the 10 provinces and the 3 territories.
Well, Grey Cup's here next year. Come on out, stay at the Wall Center. We'll have a blast. Okay, Shannon?
That sounds like something I can't refuse.
So the segue from that to hockey is, why do we have 2 dark nights this week on U.S. Thanksgiving with 7 Canadian teams?
And why were the games from Stockholm not nationally available? We went all that way and we didn't.
This is our frickin' sport. Why do we not get any attention here this week? Why can't we have all Canadian matchups on Thanksgiving? Explain this to me.
Can't. I think it's a confluence of events. Ottawa and Toronto coming back from Europe throws them out of the mix.
Right.
Edmonton and Winnipeg and Calgary are on U.S. road trips. That throws them out of the mix in many ways, because everything's trying to align for Wednesday night and Friday, Black Friday, which is what everybody's trying to deal with. There should be a Canadian matchup tonight. There should be. They should try to fill it. But I'll tell you what, I have Steve Hatzapetros is the schedule maker for the National Hockey League, and Steve and I worked together a long time. He does a magnificent job. But when you think of all the masters he has to serve between the 2 U.S. networks, and then 3 nights of national games in Canada, it's an impossible task. You could sit here and say, well, that's not right, it shouldn't happen. But he's in a no-win situation. As far as the Sweden games, I believe that Rogers was offered the games, but it doesn't make financial sense for them because of when the games start. Whether it's 2 p.m. on a Thursday Eastern time, or 11 a.m, or like the Sunday game started at 5 a.m. in Vancouver. You're not going to be able to sell advertisers, national advertisers, those types of things. So that's why they ended up being regional games.
And
And
they would have just bonused the advertisers and given us.
boy, he likes spending other people's money, man.
Yeah, I do. Yeah, I do.
What else are you showing at 5 a.m.? I mean, you downgrade the cost at that point because of
the other
because of
thing
the
is
time.
that you also have a product that, and it used to be called Center Ice, NHL Live. You also have a product on your Sportsnet Plus that can be driven by those types of things. It's not the most ideal scenario, but that's a reality of what happens when you have so many national nights otherwise. Because there would have to have been a way, if you take that game in Stockholm with the Senators or the Maple Leafs, you only allowed certain amount of available dates for national games for all the Canadian teams. So you're not, and I don't want to say this to Senators and Leafs fans, you're not going to waste it on a game that starts so early in the morning. You're not going to waste it.
Moving on to our beloved Vancouver Canucks here, who win again last night against San Jose. They're into Denver tomorrow, John. Hughes v. Makar. We're asking on our poll question today, will Hughes surpass Makar as the best defenseman in the NHL this season?
Wow. And it's funny. I just ended up watching the Nashville, Colorado highlights one more time and watching Cale Makar blow a tire on the winning goal that Nashville scored. They scored 2 goals in the last minute of play. I think the one difference for me between the two guys is size. And Cale Makar is a little more physical than Quinn Hughes. But I think anything that Quinn Hughes touches this year turns to gold. So it's going to be difficult not to think that he can surpass Makar at this point. Listening to Rick Tocchet last night after the game talk about, this is the first time in a few years that Quinn Hughes has come into a regular season completely healthy. And that speaks volumes to the start that he's had and how important he has become on the back end for the Canucks.
I mean, I think we can put to rest any worries that maybe they chose the wrong captain too, right? I mean, this has not hung heavily around his neck. And in fact, it may have inspired Quinn. This might be part of the reason why he's playing as well as he is.
Perhaps. But, the mascot could have been the captain if the team keeps winning. The residue of that. You're right, Blake. But, the chemistry on this team just seems to be so good right now. And that to me is absolutely amazing when you consider the last 18 months. And chemistry is so big. And part of that chemistry is JT Miller too. And what he brings and the compete that he brings. And, there were always people that were detractors of Miller. I was not one of them, but Miller was is a really important catalyst on this hockey club. And you don't necessarily need the C to be that catalyst.
Well, he's found a nice level with his temperament, hasn't he? Because they do need a prickly SOB. He is that still, but he's not letting it become a distraction. He's not letting it become out of control to the point where he's taking penalties, for instance, or he's found a way to contain the anger, if you will.
Well, the prickly SOB job's Rick Tocchet's. Yeah. I really think that.
Well, he still is, though. Miller still is a prickly SOB.
They have a really good synergy that I think they understand each other very well. I think they really believe in each other and don't mind, a little bit of friction between the two of them. And that friction's behind closed doors, and then life goes on.
Mm-hmm. So a couple things in addition. The problem is when JT's a prickly SOB with his own people. And I don't believe that has been the case this year.
No.
And secondly, John, I know Tocchet's reputation as a player. He has been unfailingly patient, communicative, funny. he has gone out of his way to be, and look, the winning helps, no question. But even before it became clear they were going to win all these games, I think Tocchet made a point to be a
He's a new school coach and an old school rapper.
well, that's it.
Yeah.
Like, last year he would get very frustrated after some games. This year you can tell he has chosen encouragement over discipline at virtually every turn. And he's just right now, to me, he is the touchstone for Vancouver Canucks hockey, that he's the campfire that everybody's rallying around.
Well, and I mean, that game in Philadelphia where everybody said, whoa, he's calling his team out so early in the season.
Yep.
Rick Tocchet has a good feel for his room. He knows exactly what to say and when to say it. And that leadership group that he has, because that's really in the end the key. And you hear it from coaches all the time. I don't necessarily deal with 23 players. I deal with 5 or 6, and he deals pretty directly, I'm sure, with that leadership group that Miller's part of, that Hughes is part of, that Ronick is part of. So it's a great case study on how to be patient and turn a hockey team around in a relatively short period of time. I know Vancouver fans don't think it was that short a time, but in a relatively short period of time.
Depends on when you start the clock, I suppose.
Well, you can't start it in 2012,
Yeah. Well, a great example this week, though, because, Kuzmenko wasn't great before taking the puck in the face and wasn't great again on Saturday in the loss to Seattle. And when people went back at him on Monday about Kuzmenko, he made sure to rope Pettersson and Mikheyev in and criticized the line.
Right.
And talk about how the line he had already said his piece on Kuzmenko. He wasn't going to pile on.
Distributed the weight.
Yeah,
Yes.
exactly. Yeah. Which is smart.
And John, did the rest of the league miss out on this? Because correct me if I'm wrong, but when Rick Tocchet was on the TNT panel, I didn't get the sense that people were like, who's going to hire Rick Tocchet? And like, it didn't seem like he was the buzz coach. This guy was sitting there the whole time, and I didn't hear any calls of when, we talk about guys like Quenneville and, guys that are on the sidelines. When are they going to get hired? All that sort of thing. I never heard that with Rick Tocchet. Did we know that he was going to be this caliber of a coach?
That's a good question because, like, for instance, I know he interviewed in Seattle with Ron Francis, and Ron could have hired him as his first coach and chose not to and hired Dave Haxtell instead. There were other interviews that I'm sure Rick has had, but whether it's timing or whether it just wasn't a mix, this goes back to I'm gonna call it the Pittsburgh Mafia. Jim Rutherford didn't need to interview Rick Tocchet. Mm-hmm. Jim Rutherford and Patrick Alvin knew what they had in Rick Tocchet from their days in Pittsburgh, and so it was a much simpler decision in Vancouver than it would have been with any other organization that didn't have the same time frame that they had with Tocchet with the Penguins.
This Pacific Division, John, the LA Kings are not going away. They're right there nipping at the Canucks' heels for second place and with games in hand. And then a word or two about Edmonton that blow another 2-0 lead last night, even with Connor going, and against a Florida team that is missing Sasha Barkov, maybe the best defensive centerman in the game.
Yeah, I mean, it's got to be tremendously frustrating. Connor was really good in the game in Sunrise. He did what he had to do, but he can't do it alone. And with their bottom 6 forwards are contributing. There are 2 guys that I think you have to wonder, like, where's Ryan Nugent-Hopkins? Where Leon still is not on all cylinders for some reason. Zach Hyman and Evander Kane have done everything they can do. I mean, they're workhorses. They've been great. And then they still have so many deficiencies on defense. And when by the way, when things go bad, they go awful. Take a look at one of the goals last night. Kane's stick gets knocked out of his hands. There's a transition move. The stick, slides down the ice, and Philip Broberg trips over it and then creates a 2-on-1, and they score on it. The inability of this team to create its own luck. And it just seems to be, pardon the pun, but an avalanche of things like this that are happening to the Edmonton Oilers right now. And they're going into Carolina, and they're going into Washington. It ain't going to get easier.
They might not be able to pull off a goalie trade because of the talent pool there. But do you pull off a hockey trade, like a 1-for-1, a like for like, just to shake the people up there a little bit? Isn't that
what
sort
the
of
coaches firing was all about?
Yeah,
first?
that was the first attempt anyway.
So I don't think you can. I mean, I think the sample size is a little too small still, 2-2 with Chris Knobloch. So, but if you wait too much longer, then you certainly will be out of the playoff picture.
That's right.
So go get a Columbus defenseman and see if you can shore it up by playing better team defense as opposed to relying on the goaltender.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Yeah. Which brings me to Columbus. And I know you're quite close with team president John Davidson.
Yeah.
Is Kekalainen going to get an opportunity to trade one of these defensemen, or are they going to make a managerial change?
No,
Severson's already off the market.
Well, Severson gets hurt. Poor Severson.
And full disclosure, I have not talked to John about this. Our friendship is far beyond the game of hockey. And I think Jarmo's been on the job for 10 years. I don't know why it would happen now that he doesn't get a chance to do it. I do believe that this leadership group has the full season to figure it out. And then we'll see what happens next summer.
But that's just it. Been on the job 10 years and now you're into another rebuild. Come on. I mean,
I know.
Was it a 12, 13-year plan?
It's funny because Jarmo is one of those guys that has never been afraid to, and the group has never been afraid to pull the big deals. Whether it be a trade deadline or whether it be free agent signings, and at the time they do them, and they're applauded for it. And then there just isn't a way to make it seem to fit together, and I'm certain. Well, I know it's frustrating for those people.
Lastly, Milan Lucic, he pleads not guilty today. Has he played his last NHL game?
I don't know. I'm not a lawyer, but I do believe in due process. Let's figure out what's happened. Let's see what goes on. Our rush to judgment on these types of things is very difficult at times. It certainly doesn't sound very good if you read the court proceedings. But let's just wait and see what happens.
It's less a rush to judgment and more just he's hanging on.
He wasn't playing. He hasn't been playing anyway.
He wasn't playing.
No, and at some point you become too much of a hassle to keep on the roster, right? So that's the thing.
Yeah. Cam's a pretty loyal guy, though.
Yeah,
Cam Neely's a pretty loyal guy. And by the way, Höglander's going to get a fine, eh? So just so you know.
Is he going to get a fine?
Yeah, that's all. No more, no hearing. It'll be a fine.
Okay, great stuff. Thanks for this. Enjoy your week.
Hey, happy Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
Because I know
second time around.
Mm-hmm. Are you going across the way to Buffalo and like hanging out with Harry Neal and having Thanksgiving dinner on that side as well?
It's not a bad idea, actually. It's not a bad idea, but I just, I'll just bring it in and spend the day eating turkey one more time and watching football all day. And,
yeah, they do Thanksgiving better than us. It must be said.
Well, having lived there, I know I thought I understood it. Having lived there, I understand it. It's a totally different philosophy.
Yeah.
It's the beginning of the Christmas season for them.
Effectively, yes.
Yeah.
In some cases, it's bigger than Christmas.
You get the big family at Thanksgiving, and they bring all their presents to put under the tree. And then at Christmas time, it's the immediate family.
Yeah. Thank you, John. Till next Tuesday.
Gobble, gobble.
This Sekeres Price clip brought to you by Applewood Auto Group. And remember,
it's all good at Applewood.